Let us now study the different animal tissues. So we know that cells, similar cells grouped together with similar functions, they form tissues. And there are more than 100 visibly distinguishable kinds of differentiated cells in the vertebrate animal, and these cells are organized into tissues. The tissues are then organized to form organs. A group of organs form body systems such as digestive, excretory, etc. Okay, so alam na natin tong levels of organization. Alright, so our body is composed of four different types of tissues. So we have epithelial tissue, okay, connective, nervous, and muscle tissue. So we have four different types of tissues in our body. Again, we have epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue or nerve tissue. Alright, so we will now go into the details of these four types of tissue. Alright, starting with epithelial. But before that, everybody kindly take a look at this concept map of the classification of the different animal tissues. So again, we have epithelial, muscular, connective, and nervous. Now, under epithelial tissues, we have the following: squamous, cuboidal, columnar, ciliated, and glandular epithelial tissue. Now, under muscular tissue, we have striated or skeletal muscle, okay, unstriated or smooth muscle, and we have the cardiac muscle. Now, under connective, we have the following. There are three types of connective tissues. We have proper connective tissue or connective tissue proper, skeletal connective tissue, and fluid connective tissue. Under proper connective tissue, we have loose connective and dense connective tissue. Okay, under loose, we have areolar and adipose. And we can include also reticular under loose connective. Now, for dense connective tissue, we have tendons and ligaments. Alright, and for skeletal, we have bone and cartilage. And for fluid connective tissue, we have the blood, okay, the blood and lymph. And we have nervous tissue. The basic unit of the nervous tissue is the neuron. Alright, so this is how our tissues are classified. So let us now proceed with a detailed discussion of epithelial tissue. Now, epithelial tissue or epithelium basically is a sheet of cells that covers a body surface or it lines a cavity. So basically, that's the general function of epithelial tissue. It's a sheet of cells that covers a body surface. It covers an organ or lines a cavity. So that's epithelial tissue. And also for epithelial tissue, one good example of this is the skin. Okay, the skin is covered by an epithelium that is the epidermis. So we know that the epidermis is the outermost layer. And our lips are covered by this epithelium as well. Alright, the mouth cavity or the oral cavity, as well as the esophagus, the stomach, and intestines are covered with this epithelium. Alright, and also another organ system that branches off from the oral cavity is the respiratory system. Alright, so this includes the trachea, the bronchi, all the way to the alveoli. Okay, yung after bronchi, you have the bronchioles, and the alveoli in the lungs. They are covered by this kind of tissue, epithelial tissue. So at least you know now the extent of the body systems in which the epithelial system is involved in protecting our different organs Alright, so in several places in our body, epithelial sheets roll up into tubes. So you can imagine, so these cells are rolled up into tubes and form ducts of the exocrine glands, no, like the sweat glands or even the kidney tubules. Alright, the kidney tubules are made up of this type of epithelial tissue. Right, and one particular type of epithelium known as the endothelium lines all blood vessels. So our blood vessels are lined with this epithelial tissue known as endothelium, including the capillaries and the chambers of the heart. Okay, blood vessels are hollow organs filled with blood, and this epithelium has one important characteristic, that it has anticoagulation properties. So this type of tissue, endothelium, which is a type of epithelial tissue, is important in seeing to it that the blood cells doesn't stick into the lining of the blood vessels. So it has anticoagulation properties. So the blood never sticks to it. Alright, so let us now enumerate, class, the characteristics of epithelial tissue. Alright, so number one, they form sheets of tightly bound cells or rolls into tubes. So under the microscope, they are like tiles. Alright, so para silang tiles, no? I'm sure you have seen tiles, di ba, sa flooring, ano? So these cells are closely packed, no, under the microscope, tightly bound, and some of them are even rolled into tubes like yung kidney tubules natin. Okay, so that's the appearance of epithelial tissues, more or less. And epithelial cells, they lie on the basement membrane. So may basement membrane siya. Alright, next, epithelial cells have two different sides, the apical and basolateral. Now, the apical side always faces out of the body. Okay, or outside or into a lumen. Pag sinabi nating lumen, this is the cavity inside the tube. Okay? So, kanya yung tubo, ito yung lumen, yun nasa loob. Alright? So, yun ang apical side. The apical side always faces out of the body. Okay? Outside or into a lumen. Alright? What about the basolateral? Yung basolateral pa, opposite. No? It faces in of the body or into a lumen. Next, there is a small amount or an absence of extracellular matrix. So, kasi nga closely packed yung mga cells, this type of tissue cannot really accommodate any form of extracellular matrix. No? Unlike yung connective tissue, which we will study later. So, small amount or absence of extracellular matrix, again, because these cells are closely or tightly packed together. Okay, and this type of tissue is avascular, meaning that they don't have supply of blood. Wala silang blood vessels. Okay, and baka magtanong kayo, how do they get their nutrition or oxygen? So this tissue get their nutrients and oxygen via simple diffusion. Okay, via simple diffusion. So they are avascular, meaning they are not really supplied with blood vessels. So they don't have blood vessels. And also, another important characteristic of epithelial tissues is that they have a high regenerative potential. So these cells can regenerate. Alright, so they can replace dead, damaged cells through mitosis. Alright, so those are the characteristics of epithelial tissues. Alright, so let's now continue. Alright, so let us now proceed with the different types of epithelial tissues. Now, everybody kindly take a look at this concept map. So, epithelial tissue is classified as follows. So, we have simple, compound, and glandular epithelium. Now, under simple epithelium, we have squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, simple ciliated, and simple pseudostratified. Now, the word simple means that the epithelial tissue has only one layer of cells. Alright, in contrast to compound epithelium, when you say compound epithelium, the epithelial tissue is made up of two or more layers of cells like stratified and transitional compound epithelium. And we have glandular epithelia, which is involved in secretion of substances. Okay, so again, in terms of the classification of epithelial tissue, we can classify epithelial tissue based on the number of cell layers. Okay, so based on the number of cell layers, we can classify epithelial tissue as simple, stratified, and pseudostratified. So again, simple meaning that the epithelial tissue is made up of only a single layer of cells. Stratified meaning that the epithelial tissue is made up of several layers of cells. Alright, and for pseudostratified, I'll try to explain this later kasi medyo ano siya, no? Iba yung ano niya, iba yung orientation ng mga cells. Okay, for simple epithelium, like what I mentioned earlier, simple epithelium has only one layer of cells lying on the basement membrane. So may basement membrane siya, then above that we have a single layer of cells. Alright, simple epithelia are found in places where there is not much mechanical impact on the surface. So for stratified epithelium, like what I mentioned earlier, stratified epithelium, the epithelial tissue has two or more layers of cells, alright, stacked on top of one another. Alright, so again, ang function niyan, so that the reason why this type of epithelial tissue is made up of several layers of cells, this is in order to increase the strength of the barrier. Alright, so pag maraming layers, mas protected yung tissue underneath or yung organ underneath it. Alright, so stratified epithelia are located in places that is subjected to more mechanical force. So meaning bugbog yung part na yan sa environmental factors. So for added protection, kailangan ng several layers of cells. Unlike yung simple epithelial tissue. So makikita natin yung simple epithelial tissue in places where there is not much mechanical impact. So, hindi siya masyadong bugbog. Kaya just one layer of cells will be adequate for protection. Unlike stratified epithelium, you need more than one layer of cells. Kasi nga, you can find stratified epithelial tissues in places wherein the body part is subjected to more mechanical force. And epithelial tissues are also classified based on the shape of the cells. So based on the shape of the cells, epithelial tissue can be classified into three groups. So we have squamous, epithelium, cuboidal, columnar. Okay, let us now describe squamous or pavement epithelium. So under the microscope, squamous epithelial cells, they appear as flat and they look like fried eggs. No, with a nucleus, yung parang hindi scramble yung tawag nito, sunny side up. Okay, with a nucleus that projects a little higher than the rest of the cytoplasm. So like the one in the picture. Ayan, di ba? So para siyang sunny side up na itlog na may nucleus sa gitna. Alright, ayan, something like this. So para siyang sunny side up na eggs with the nucleus. Okay guys, so that's how we describe simple squamous under the microscope, or we can also describe them as a layer of closely packed cells na parang tiles, no? Something like that. Para silang tiles na talagang dikit-dikit. Okay, so that's simple squamous. Simple squamous meaning again, it is made up of just a single layer of cells. You know, squamous epithelium can be single layered or simple squamous, or multi-layered or stratified squamous. And again, the function of squamous epithelium is lining and covering of a certain body part or organ. Alright, so that's squamous epithelium. So mukha silang ano, no, parang fried eggs, no, parang sunny side up na itlog na nandun yung nucleus sa gitna. Or you can describe them as parang tile-like na made up of closely packed cells. Alright, examples of simple squamous epithelium are as follows. So we have endothelium, yung inner lining ng mga blood vessels natin. So the inner lining of our blood vessels, they are covered with simple squamous epithelium, no? So yung endothelium, which is the innermost layer of our blood vessels. So yan, made up of simple squamous epithelium, yung endothelium na yan. Yan, also we have the lining of the heart chambers, no? So yung endocardium na tinatawag. So the endocardium is also made up of simple squamous epithelium. Alright, also external surfaces of internal organs, parang covering ng mga internal organs, or the mesothelium is also made up of simple squamous epithelium. Examples of stratified squamous epithelium would be the skin, no? Yung outer layer ng skin or epidermis. Okay, and also the inner lining of our cheek dito sa oral cavity is also made up of stratified squamous epithelium. So as you could see here, under the microscope, the lining of the oral cavity is made up of several layers of cells. Alright, next we have simple cuboidal. No, so by the name itself, cuboidal, the shape of the cells, they are roughly square or cuboidal in shape. No, as their name implies, kaya nga cuboidal cells are roughly square-like or cuboidal in shape. And sometimes they are rolled into tubes. Okay, itong mga cells na to, they are rolled into tubes like the one in the illustration here. These are the kidney tubules, and if you will notice that the cells are cube-like or square-like. Alright, cuboidal epithelium is found in the glands and the lining of the kidney tubules. Ito, actually itong photo na ito are the kidney tubules. Okay, as well as the ducts of glands. Okay, so this is simple cuboidal. These are the kidney tubules, and ito, no, yung mga cells niya are square-like or cube-like. Alright, again, these are the kidney tubules. Yung parang niroll niyo siya into a tube. And again, if you will look closely at the cells are square-like or cube-like. Alright, so the kidney tubules are examples of simple cuboidal. Okay, and simple cuboidal like the endocrine organs like the thyroid gland. Ayan, no? So ang thyroid gland may mga tubules. So simple cuboidal siya, no? Like the thyroid gland. We have also stratified cuboidal made up of several layers of cube-like cells like the parotid gland, the one in the picture. Alright, so we have simple cuboidal like the thyroid gland, and we have stratified cuboidal like the parotid gland. Okay, then we have a columnar epithelium. So as the name implies, columnar. So the cells are elongated and column-shaped. No, elongated and column-shaped like the one in the picture here. So the cells are column-shaped and elongated. Columnar epithelial cells occur in one or more layers. So meron siyang simple columnar, so made up of a single layer of columnar cells, and stratified columnar made up of several layers of elongated and column-shaped cells. This type of tissue, columnar epithelium, can be located or can be found in the lining of the stomach and the intestine. Okay, some columnar cells are specialized for sensory reception such as the nose, ears, and the taste buds of the tongue. Pero most of this type of tissue is found in the digestive systems, specifically the stomach and the intestine. Ayan, so this is simple columnar with only a single layer of column or elongated shape cells. Na meron ding stratified columnar. Okay, ito simple columnar siya. Alright, then next we have ciliated columnar. Ito naman, this is a special type of columnar epithelium wherein the cells are equipped with fine hair-like structures called cilia. Alright, these are simple columnar epithelial cells with hair-like outgrowths or projections called cilia. Okay, saan to makikita? Ciliated columnar epithelium is usually found in the air passages sa respiratory system like the nose, and it is also found in the uterus and fallopian tubes of the females. Okay, bakit kasi yung cilia niyan? It is important so to propel the egg. No, yan, to the movement of the cilia propels the egg or the ovum to the uterus once it gets fertilized. Okay, so that's ciliated columnar epithelium. So again, the air passages like the nose, yung trachea, bronchi, yung mga bronchioles, they are all equipped with these hair-like structures called cilia. Okay, the cilia plays an important role in the removal of foreign substances, dust particles that may have entered the respiratory system. And also, this type of tissue, ciliated columnar, can be found in the fallopian tubes and the uterus. This is to propel the fertilized egg to the uterus. So yung mga movement ng cilia, they play an important role in moving the fertilized egg to the uterus once it gets fertilized in the fallopian tube. And you could see here the hair-like structures or cilia in the lining of the fallopian tubes. And lastly, we have pseudo-stratified epithelium. Now, when we speak of pseudo-stratified epithelium, this is a type of epithelium that under the microscope, you might think that it is made up of only a single layer of cells. But in fact, if you will look closely at the orientation of the nucleus, it would suggest that this tissue is actually made up of several layers of cells. Okay, so that's why I mentioned here, though comprising only a single layer of cells, so under the microscope, you might think that the tissue is made up only of a single layer of cells. But if you will look closely at the orientation of the nucleus, you will realize that this tissue is made up of several layers of cells. Alright, so yan, comprising only a single layer of cells, has its cells nuclei positioned in a manner suggestive of stratified epithelia. Alright, so where can you find this type of tissues? You can find that again in the respiratory tract, the air passages, especially the trachea. Though ang trachea meron siyang cilia, di ba? Ciliated columnar siya. Pero yung ilalim niya, pseudo-stratified. Okay, especially ito. Yan, ito. Alright, so nandito yung cilia, pero if you will look closely at the cells, so sa biglang tingin parang single layer na lang siya, no? Pero yung orientation ng mga nucleus would suggest that the tissue is actually made up of several layers of cells. Kaya pseudo-stratified siya. Pero at the same time, ano to, ciliated columnar. Kasi ito yung mga columnar cells na may cilia. You can find this in the trachea or the windpipe. And lastly, for epithelial tissue, we have glandular epithelium. Okay, so glandular epithelium is made up of columnar cells, and may mga special cells din dito called goblet cells. Alright, the columnar and the cuboidal epithelial cells often become specialized as gland cells. So may mga columnar and cuboidal cells dito. Together with these goblet cells, they are specialized for secretion. Ayan, capable of synthesizing and secreting certain substances, no, like enzymes, hormones, ayan, involved in milk production like in the case of the mammary glands, mucus like in the case of the salivary glands, alright, sweat, yung cerumen, okay, ceruminous glands that produces the earwax and saliva, no, salivary glands. Okay, mucus, ito rin sa sa stomach, no, meron din yan may mga glandular epithelia in the stomach that produces a layer of mucus. Okay, yung mucus layer na yan sa stomach is important to protect the lining of the stomach from the acidity. Okay, kasi diba ang stomach produces hydrochloric acid. Let's take a look now at the following animal tissues and let's try to identify. Ayan, so ito, no, para siyang fried eggs, na parang ano siya, sunny side up night dog, diba, with the nucleus at the center. So this type of epithelial tissue is squamous. And again, under the microscope, para silang tiles, no? Because again, squamous epithelium is made up of closely packed cells. Alright, now they resemble tiles or sunny side up eggs or fried eggs. Okay, ito naman, this type of tissue is cuboidal, no? Ayan, para siyang nirolyo into a tube, and if you will look closely at the cells, ano yan, square-like or cube-like. Ito, no? So these are the kidney tubules, so ano yan, cuboidal epithelial tissue. Alright, ito naman, this is the epidermis of the skin. So this is stratified squamous or stratified epithelial tissue. Yan, no? So the epidermis, like what I mentioned earlier, is made up of several layers, no? Like yung stratum corneum, stratum spinosum, stratum germinativum, okay, and yung basal layer or germinativum, basal layer. Okay? Alright, ito naman, this is, pinakita ko na to kanina, these are column-shaped cells. So this is columnar, simple columnar epithelium. Okay, ito naman, kita yung cilia niya. So this is ciliated columnar. Or ito kasi, look at the nucleus, no? So para siyang, it is more of ciliated, pseudostratified epithelial tissue, na para siyang pseudostratified yung orientation kasi ng mga nuclei ng cells. Okay? Alright. Ito, this is ciliated columnar, kasi ito yung cilia and you have here columnar cells. Okay. Alright, next, let's now proceed with connective tissues. Now, connective tissues, they perform the following functions. Now, the major functions of connective tissue includes the following. So, binding and supporting other tissues, protection, insulation, storage of reserve fuel like yung sa adipose tissue or fat, and transporting substances within the body like our blood. Ayan, blood is a type of connective tissue. And so those are the major functions of connective tissue: binding and supporting, protection, insulation, storage of reserve fuel like fat or adipose tissue, then transporting substances within the body like the blood. Okay, structure of connective tissue. So a typical connective tissue has three main components. So we have ground substance or yung extracellular matrix, yeah. All right, fibers and the cells. Okay, together with the ground substance and fibers, they make up the extracellular matrix. So collectively, itong ground substance, yung fibers, and even the cells, they make up the extracellular matrix. The composition of these three elements vary tremendously from one organ to the other. Yan, mamaya pag-uusapan natin yan. This offers great diversity in the type of connective tissue. Okay, so let's take a look at the types of connective tissue fibers. So there are three types of fibers that is found in connective tissue. So we have collagen, yan, i-describe natin silang tatlo: collagen, elastic fibers, and reticular fibers. So what is collagen? Alright, collagen, these are fibers in the connective tissue that are the strongest and the most abundant. Collagen fibers are fibrous proteins and they are secreted into the extracellular space and they provide high tensile strength to the matrix. So, ito yung pinakamatibay and pinakamarami rin sa lahat ng fibers sa connective tissue. Like everybody, kindly take a look at this photo of collagen fibers. Di ba makapal siya, no? Makapal. As compared to elastic fibers na medyo manipis. Yung purple stained fibers, yun yung elastic fibers. Then yung reddish stained fibers, yun yung collagen, yung makapal. So makikita natin talaga na they are really the strongest and also they are the most abundant type of fibers found in connective tissue. What about elastic fibers? Ito yung elastin or elastic fibers. They are long, thin fibers, no? Thin fibers. Ito yung purple, stained fibers. Yung red, yun yung collagen. Ito naman, elastic fibers. So, they are long, thin fibers that form branches. No? They form a network of fibers. Nakitang-kita naman sa photo. Okay, in the extracellular matrix. They help the connective tissue to stretch and recoil. Ayan. Yun ang kaya nga tinawag siya na elastic fiber. So, this will allow the connective tissue to stretch and to recoil. Alright, then also we have reticular fibers. Reticular fibers are short, fine collagenous fibers that can branch extensively to form a delicate network. You can find this in the liver, no? If you will examine the liver under the microscope, marami siyang reticular fibers. So it maintains more or less the general shape of a particular organ na medyo malambot like the liver. Ayan, so they are short, fine, collagenous fibers that can branch extensively to form a delicate network. Ayan, no? So these are liver cells actually, no? And they form a network of fibers to give support and maintains more or less the shape of the organ. Ayan, no? So those are the three types of fibers that are found in the extracellular matrix of connective tissues. So we have the collagen fibers. They are the strongest and the most abundant. And we have the elastic fibers, which are long and thin. And we have reticular fibers as well. For the types of connective tissues, so we have the following. So connective tissues can be classified as follows. So we have supportive connective tissue. And we have connective tissue proper and fluid connective tissue. So dito muna tayo siguro sa connective tissue proper. Now under connective tissue proper, we have loose connective tissue and we have dense connective tissue. Alright, now under loose connective, we have areolar connective tissue, adipose, and reticular. Okay, reticular connective tissue. Under dense, we have regular and irregular. Or kasama na din dito yung guys, no, yung dense, yung tendons and ligaments. Okay, let's describe first loose connective. Dito muna tayo sa loose connective tissue. Now, loose connective tissue is the most widespread connective tissue of the body. It is characterized by an abundance of ground substance, yung extracellular matrix, plus thin and relatively few fibers and cells. So actually tatlo yan. We have areolar, adipose, and reticular connective tissue. So what is adipose connective tissue? So adipose connective tissue is a specialized connective tissue that functions as a major storage site for fat. Ito yung reserve fuel that I mentioned earlier. Okay, and this type of tissue can store fats in the form of triglycerides. So if you will notice under the microscope, the cells are globular and medyo malaki yung kanilang vacuoles or vesicles. So the vesicles contain triglycerides. So storage siya ng fat. Okay, adipose or fat connective tissue. Alright, so this is the appearance of the cells under the microscope. So para siyang globular and yung nucleus is already pushed to one side. Kasi nga yung vesicle or yung vacuole punong-puno ng triglycerides. Okay, then we have areolar connective tissue. So areolar or loose connective tissue is the most widely distributed connective tissue type in vertebrates. So under the microscope, yung mga fibers niya, yung collagen fibers, they form mesh-like fibers. Yung appearance ng collagen parang mesh-like, parang net, tawag nito, mesh, yung magulo. No, magulo yung orientation ng collagen fibers. Yan, kaya nilagay ko dito, mesh-like tissue. And the function of the areolar connective tissue is again for cushioning the organ and protection. Ayan, no? It holds the organs in place and attaches the epithelial tissue to other underlying tissue. So yun yung areolar. Again, if you will look closely at the collagen fibers, para siyang magulo, they form mesh-like fibers in appearance under the microscope. Okay, for dense connective, we have the following, yan, no? Like the tendons and ligaments. Okay, so we have regular and irregular. Ayan, no? So dense connective tissue form a strong rope-like structures like the tendons and ligaments. Then for supportive connective tissue, we have bones and cartilage. Right? So cartilage is a type of actually supportive connective tissue siya, not really dense, but supportive connective tissue. And it is composed of specialized cells called chondrocytes. Okay, that produces a large amount of extracellular matrix composed of collagen fibers. So ito yung mga cells niya or chondrocytes embedded in the extracellular matrix made up of collagen. And we have bone tissue also under supportive connective tissue. Alright, so the main element is this. We call this the osteon. Ito yung parang bilog siya. The osteon is composed of cells called osteocytes embedded in the lacunae or lacuna. Then may mga para siyang maliliit na tubes called canaliculi. Alright, so yung mga maiitim na yan, those are the osteocytes or bone cells. Then may mga maliliit na parang branches doon surrounding the osteocytes, we call them canaliculi. Yung matrix ng bone tissue is calcified, it is made of calcium. Ayan, so yan, canaliculi, yung parang mga branches na yan that surrounds the osteocyte, which is embedded in the lacuna. Alright, then at the center, we have a canal called the Habertian Canal. The entire thing is called an osteon. Ito itong bilog na to is an osteon. Okay, so those are the types of supportive connective tissue.